clean the trucks, inventory the trucks. You take care of it just like you take care of your home.
Every station has gym with full equipment.
The department's training division is very involved in health and fitness initiative.
We have an extensive behavioral health program. We assess risk within the fire department in three main areas. One is behavioral health, physical fitness, and on-the-job duties that we do, and then in training.
In St. Petersburg Fire Rescue, it's important to us to have a fire response service that reflects the community that we serve.
St. Petersburg is a very diverse city, and we can all work to reach a common goal together.
We've had folks that come to us and reach out to us, and that's the kind of trust we're looking for with our public.
One of our biggest programs is our Home Safe program, which provides free smoke alarm installations to City of St. Petersburg homeowners. Another big component is public education and community outreach. We provide public education on fire safety and injury prevention to citizens of all ages.
To me, being on the front lines as a first responder, I'm blessed every single day. There's no better feeling when you lay your head down at night and you're like, wow, I really had a hand in helping.
It's hard work, but it's hard work towards doing something great.
I know for a fact that I work for a really good fire department. It's an extreme honor.
You want to do something you love, this is the place. If you want to be the best, this is the place. You can't get any better place to work.
I'm Dan Gulick. Join our team.
Hola, me llamo Teresa Bieber Rishi. Únete a nosotros.
제 이름은 김희경입니다. 세인트 피터스버그 소방관에 가입하세요.
I am Aaron Walton. Join our team.
I'm Dr. Tanja Williams. I am the first African American and female president of St. Petersburg College in St. Petersburg, Florida. My definition of a trailblazer is a person who has a fire burning in the bottom of their belly that they just have to get out. A person who's willing to practice courage over comfort, who's willing to step out and do something that no one has done because they feel passionate about it and they feel that they have something that they could add to it to help make things better than they are now. Being one of the very few St. Petersburg natives born and raised in St. Pete, getting a job at St. Petersburg College alone was a big deal for us. Growing up, I did not get to see African American college presidents. As a matter of fact, I don't believe I had an African American faculty member when I was going to college. So to be president was not something that I thought was in my reach. It wasn't a part of my vision. But when it came to fruition, I realized that it was such a huge honor and a huge opportunity to help others understand that it's not where you start, it's where you finish. So being the president of SPC is an honor, it is a privilege, it's also a lot of hard work. One of the biggest moments of a college president is the investiture. I remember fighting tears because it's a part of my journey that my mom, who helped get me there, was not able to join me. She had passed away. She said, Tanja, you're gonna do some cool things in life. I'm not gonna be here to see it, but I know you will. And she said, don't sell your soul to get it, and don't sell your soul to keep it. And I remember standing on that stage saying to her, we did it, and I did not sell my soul. I've had a lot of people in my life who stood in the gap for me to help me do what I didn't think I could even do myself. People like Helen Collier at George's Pools. They were one of the first African-American millionaires in St. Petersburg who owned a swimming pool company. They pushed me hard to go to college, and they helped me stay in college. For those of you who are thinking, wow, I've failed 3 times, get up the 4th time. Many of us have failed. Many of us have made mistakes, but you dust yourself off and you keep going. It's all about the possibilities. Don't leave them on the table. Get up, dust yourself off, and keep trying.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you for coming to today's Housing, Land Use, and Transportation Committee. We'll call to order. Will the clerk please call a roll?
Floyd.
Here.
Harding. Here. Driscoll.
Here.
Gabbard.
Here.
All right. Committee members, we have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We also have the approval of the October 9th, 2025 minutes. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Great. We're on to our new business for today. We're going to be having a discussion on neighborhood traffic calming. We have Evan with us and Cheryl as well, and a third person who I don't have written down. I'm so sorry.
I got new introductions in a second.
Okay, great. This is my item, actually. Excited to talk about it. I don't think anyone up here, actually, let me say it the other way. I'm sure everyone up here gets a lot of calls from constituents about wanting their neighborhood traffic to be calmer, I guess, to be straightforward. They want to feel like they have a safe place to hang out, walk around, walk their dogs, go for a bike ride. And so I brought this forward because we have a strategy in place. We'll talk about that. And we're just going to talk about if there's any ways that we can make that strategy a little better. So with that, I'll let you take it away. Although I see we...
Maybe not.
Can we get rid of that?
Just exit out.
Just exit out and see if all goes well.
All right. Cheryl, you drive.
Let's find out.
She'll drive while I.
Okay. All right.
So good morning, all, and thank you for this new business item and referral. We're glad to meet with you this morning. As you mentioned, Cheryl Stacks, our transportation manager, is joining at the table, and then this is David Haggerty to my left. He's our neighborhood transportation coordinator. He's probably most likely to join you at neighborhood association meetings if traffic calming is on the list or any concerns about parking in a neighborhood. He's been with us for over a year now, making the rounds, and definitely hit the ground running. So we're happy to have him. Happy to introduce him to you today. We'll also have members or leadership from the fire and police department with us this morning, as questions may come up that they could help answer. And ironically, a couple of them are stuck in traffic. But I assure you, it's not just because of traffic calming. It would be an interstate type issue. So we're happy to go over some background with you, and then tell you about a few of the things we're thinking about changing in the program. And we'd love to get your questions and your feedback about those changes or any other feedback that you have for us this morning. So what is traffic calming, and what does it do? And it can be described in different ways, but I hope you like what we came up with in the memo. Traffic calming is the process of modifying roadways to change driver behavior using self-enforcing physical or psycho-perception means. And what it does is improve the quality of life and safety in neighborhoods by reducing excessive speeding or cut-through traffic or both. And in these pictures, you can see a couple different options for traffic calming. On the left is a vertical traffic calming element, a speed hump, and on the right is horizontal. So there will be a test at the end for what's vertical, what's horizontal. You'll see where that comes into play a little bit later in terms of where we can use the different strategies and where we might want to change that in the future. And these are examples of physical means of using speed humps, which really are the most effective, cost-effective, and effective way to reduce speeds significantly. That's what you can see on the left. And we also have other variations, which would include speed tables that you can see on the right, which is essentially an elongated speed hump that you can drive over a little bit faster. A speed hump, you have to slow down to about 15 miles an hour to make it comfortable, and a speed table has a design speed of 20. Here we can also use friction or narrowing. That's kind of that psychological part where you just feel like you're squeezed. So you're not driving over anything that jostles you, or you're afraid to hit it too hard because it's going to make your head hit the top of your car, but it just squeezes you down and you slow down because of that perception issue. And here's another lateral shift and a chicane. Similar, but a little bit different. And we can also use raised intersections, which really helps in the case where you want to slow down traffic in all 4 approaches and through the intersection, which intersections are where we oftentimes have our crashes. And here's another example, traffic circle. You know, the traffic circles are smaller, roundabouts are larger. Really, the larger they get, the better that they work. And we found that we and others have found if you try to make a traffic circle where it doesn't fit, it doesn't work really well. So this is about as small as you can go to have an effective traffic circle. This would not be considered a roundabout. But what's great about these is it slows traffic, it slows it in all directions. And these often take the places of 2-way or 4-way stops. And they're more efficient at circulating traffic. And also when you have crashes, you tend to not have serious crashes. You don't have the T-bone crashes. You have side swipes. So you have property damage crashes rather than bodily injury crashes. And further, what's traffic calming and how do we use it? It's really a premise we operate under in that we can't have traffic calming on every single roadway in the city. Not only would it be extremely expensive to implement that and time consuming, but it would have other unintended consequences. Some of them are listed on the screen. And as our partners in public safety would probably agree, or I know they agree, that if we overuse traffic calming, we will maybe cut down on crashes, which is one of the intentions of limited traffic calming. But if we had speed humps on every road, it would get to the point where it would negatively affect their response times for calls, whether that be police or fire. And if we had no criteria, very low criteria, I think that would be where we would end up. So later we'll propose softening some of our criteria, but we caution against softening it too much. And in the next few slides, I'll go through these quickly, but wanted to demonstrate that the program is supported by the city's comprehensive plan. It gives us some guidance and some restrictions. So here's the first one. Another one about an objective about preserving neighborhood integrity. And here's the directive about using traffic studies and data in the process. As you know, we do that. And finally, the plan reserves vertical traffic calming for local roads and neighborhood collectors. Only horizontal measures can be used on our major roadways. And here I will hand it over to David to continue to give you a little bit of history and current events for traffic calming.
Good morning, everyone. So I'll give a brief history of traffic calming here in St. Pete and then discuss our current program and some recent trends that we've been seeing. The city began developing neighborhood traffic plans back in 1999, and these plans identified locations for traffic calming devices on a neighborhood-wide scale. They included significant input from neighborhood associations and required a neighborhood-wide vote in order to be adopted. Today, the traffic calming program is well established with over 1,400 devices installed. The program has changed since it started in that we now usually assess the need for traffic calming devices on individual streets when a request is received instead of planning on a neighborhood scale. Today, a traffic calming request needs to be initiated by a property owner or tenant on the street where traffic calming is being requested, and traffic calming measures are only considered after a traffic speed and volume study is completed. We have separate criteria for evaluating a speeding concern versus a cut-through traffic concern, both of which can qualify for traffic calming measures. For evaluating a speeding concern, to consider traffic calming, we need to see 3 things on the street. The first being that the street needs to be a local or a neighborhood collector road with a speed limit below 35 miles an hour. The 85th percentile speed of traffic needs to be above 35 miles an hour in at least one direction. And at least 2/3 of the impacted households need to be supportive of traffic calming as determined through a petition. To determine the 85th percentile speed and volume of traffic on the road, we have traffic counters that we set up in each lane. And you can see them here on the screen. They're just a few inches by a few inches wide, very discreet. When we're assessing a cut-through traffic problem, again, there's 3 criteria that we're looking for, similar but slightly different. Again, the street needs to be a local or neighborhood collector with a speed limit under 35. There needs to be a measured cut-through traffic problem. And again, at least 2/3 of impacted households need to be supportive. The determination of whether a street has a cut-through traffic problem is based on road context and using engineering judgment and industry guidance to determine what a reasonable amount of traffic on the road would be. And we compare that to collected traffic volumes, again, using those counters. Just a quick note on road classification. We determined that using the future major streets map, which is provided in the city's comprehensive plan. And by doing that, it ensures that we're considering future growth through the process. Another side note on petitions, we accept 1 vote per household from an owner or a tenant age 18 plus. And voters are given 3 options when they receive the petition. They can either vote yes, they're supportive of traffic calming, no, they're not, or yes, but not abutting their property. Assuming a location has a successful traffic study and petition, traffic calming devices are only installed after we receive approval from Transportation and Parking Management, so this department, Engineering and Capital Improvements, Stormwater Pavement and Traffic Operations, and the Neighborhood Association if one is active. The approval process can be iterative, and staff will work with the association and internal departments to find an acceptable traffic calming solution. Approved locations are then put in a queue for installation by SPTO. The charts on this slide provide a summary of the traffic calming requests which were evaluated in 2024. The city received 110 unique requests which were eligible to be evaluated for traffic calming. And of those, 24% of the requests met the speed or volume criteria in order to move through the process. Typically, the next step would be the petition. Of that 24% that was eligible to move forward, 39% had a successful petition, 46% had an unsuccessful petition, and 15% did not require a petition because it was a low impact device, something like a radar feedback sign, where we would get approval from the association first to skip the petition. This next slide shows the trends that we've been seeing over the last 3 years, which are largely similar. Between 2022 and 2024, we received between 94 and 122 annual requests for traffic calming measures which were eligible to be studied. And during those years, between 8% and 7%, depending on the year, ultimately qualified for traffic calming to be considered based on a successful traffic study and a successful petition. Once again, to briefly summarize, while many traffic calming requests may not ultimately qualify for traffic calming measures to be installed, the program is still very active with over 1,400 devices installed to date. The reason that some streets are not qualifying is because our program targets frequent, excessive, and unreasonable speeding and cut-through traffic. And with that, I will pass it over to Cheryl.
Thank you, David. Our annual budget has grown in recent years from $100,000 annually to $150,000 annually beginning in fiscal year 24, which coincided with our practice to return construction efforts back to internal resources. The funding is provided through the Penny for Pinellas, and traffic calming devices are now constructed and maintained by SPTO staff, as David mentioned. That annual budget, again, is allocated to the program, which focuses on traffic calming on our residential streets. For major streets, any traffic calming is really intended for speed moderation and generally accomplished as a part of major reconstruction. It would include elements like landscape medians, curb extensions, and that are intended to change driver perceptions about the roadway and generally encourage motorists to drive just a little bit slower. It doesn't include any vertical elements currently, but FDOT has some experimental design standards that are being integrated into state design manuals, which is encouraging. So about the neighborhood traffic calming program, for our program, though, we do have a few changes that we are considering in the spirit of constant improvement. The goal of these changes would be to ensure fairness, remain consistent with best practices, and continue our efforts aimed at efficiency. So the first change we're contemplating is to update our criteria associated with excessive speeding. Instead of using a flat rate of 35 miles an hour for the 85th percentile speed, we would evaluate speeds according to the street's speed limit. So we would consider locations where the 85th percentile speed is greater than 8 miles an hour above the speed limit to have excessive speeding. This helps to promote fairness in accounting for differential speed limits, since many of our neighborhood streets have a posted speed limit of 25 miles an hour, while others have a speed limit of 30, and a few have a speed limit as low as 20 miles an hour. The second change we're contemplating is to establish a more definitive metric associated with our volume criteria. Using information from various industry sources, we'd establish a base volume for traffic on the street. We do that to make sure that there's at least a minimum threshold so we're not over-treating streets that have very low volumes of traffic. Once we see that there's a minimum volume that's met and there aren't extenuating circumstances, we'd compare that daily traffic volume with the traffic during the highest hour of the day. So if we're seeing that 15 to 20% of the street's traffic is occurring during a certain hour, it may be indicative of a cut-through issue. It's important to note that while this is indeed more objective than the current practice, we'll continue to retain our ability to exercise judgment for certain situations when the volume may be associated with a destination that's on the street, such as a church or a school, or when it's a cul-de-sac. That's not cut-through traffic, and volumes are unlikely to be changed by traffic calming devices in those instances. The third proposed change relates to the options on our petition. We currently have an option where residents can indicate support for traffic calming, but a preference that it's not located in front of their property. This can be limiting and could prevent us from installing devices with the spacing that allows them to be most effective. Removing the not abutting my property option allows us to identify the most ideal spacing and locations to address the speeding concerns, but could result in fewer locations having successful petitions. We're also contemplating some added clarifications, primarily to address some situations that are becoming more common for us. We've had more requests to consider traffic calming along streets that include multifamily residential units alongside it. Our current practice is to accept one vote from the condo board or the apartment's management to represent the entire property. As noted here, in many cases, the individual units do not directly abut the road where the traffic calming is considered, and it really would be impractical for us to try to obtain a signature for the individual units or even the individual buildings. Here, we're simply looking to formalize incorporation of our current practice. Occasionally, we do get requests for the city to consider removing traffic calming devices. We wanted to formalize a procedure to address those requests and add specific criteria associated with that. It would include those listed here. In short, we'd want to make sure that we're not removing devices that have only recently been installed and that we have considerable support for their removal. We'd also provide a time frame for which we would refrain from considering any new devices in locations where the devices were removed. We want to make sure that we're remaining efficient with our resources. Like much of our work in city government and transportation, the program isn't without its challenges. Two that are reasonably common are listed here. Some residents have expressed displeasure with the city's practice to require the neighborhood association approval. We've continued to include that, though, to be sure that there's broad support for the devices in addition to the support by the resident stakeholders on an affected street. But it is somewhat limiting in certain neighborhoods. Another is that some residents may want to exert more control over streets that they use that are outside of their neighborhood, but that they drive frequently due to the nature of the street network. In those instances, we've continued to allow neighborhood representatives to stay engaged with the traffic calming process, but not necessarily provide determinative input as to the city's decision to install traffic calming devices. I alluded to it earlier, but here are some recent changes at the state level that allow for vertical traffic calming on major streets when it's contextually appropriate to do so, primarily associated with raised crosswalks. So we're not slowing down traffic just to slow down traffic. It's really to add visibility and height associated with pedestrians who are trying to cross the street. It really just allows for another tool in the engineering toolbox to address speeding and visibility concerns and address pedestrian crashes. However, our current comp plan language precludes us from taking advantage of this opportunity to even consider it on roadways with higher classifications. This picture is from Orlando near Camping World Stadium, where FDOT has installed a series of raised enhanced crosswalks. And the traffic calming uses a gentler vertical profile than traditional speed tables. It's better for longer and heavier vehicles, trucks, for example, that are generally expected to use these types of roads. So it does have a different profile and different advisory speed than you would see that we would use on a more residential street. A local example of this vertical element to highlight for you is when FDOT approached us about converting some existing crosswalks on Fifth Avenue North to raised crosswalks to connect between the parking and the hospital entrance at St. Anthony's on Fifth Avenue, and we had to turn them down. They were designing the resurfacing project and wanted to enhance the crosswalks that connected. Fortunately, they were able to keep the flashing beacons, and so we do still have an enhanced crosswalk, but we weren't able to add the height and the extra visibility that the speed table would have allowed us. This is a picture of what that looks like. These are the crosswalks in general, right here. So we would like to consider some potential amendments to the comp plan as a separate exercise to the neighborhood traffic calming program, but we would only do that after further analysis of the devices that FDOT is using. We want to see how those are being received, what are potential unintended consequences, and those kinds of things. We also need to have some time to collaborate with additional stakeholders like PD and fire and sanitation, for example. And then allow us some time to put a framework around it, like when's the most contextually appropriate use here in St. Petersburg for that. So that would be an exercise that we would undertake. And with that, I can turn it back to Evan for any closing information.
Nothing much to close here. Just wanted to thank you for your time and welcome your questions and your feedback.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the presentation this morning. So give a little bit of feedback and maybe a couple of questions. So we can start with the proposed change number 1. I'm going to go to that slide. All right, the speed criteria. Wanted to ask, because you talked a little bit about budget. So we had a situation, maybe a year and a half ago, where we were trying to do some speed reduction and bring the speed down in Riviera Bay neighborhood. The neighborhood had come together. They had asked, they wanted to be a 20-mile-per-hour neighborhood. It's a very large neighborhood geographically. And so at that point in time, we were hopeful that we would be able to get a grant to do that. And we had gone through that process and were pretty successful up to a point. And then that grant got pulled back. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that in the form of the budget, because when we looked at it to do it ourselves, it was outside of the budget that we had. So, we'll be starting our council process again. And can we talk a little bit about, and maybe we can use that particular neighborhood as an example, if City Council were to allocate additional budget to this bucket, do we kind of have a plan where we're looking at neighborhoods across the city, we're engaging with them in neighborhood meetings to find out maybe how many neighborhoods there might be that are looking to reduce their speed? I live in a 20-mile-per-hour neighborhood. It makes a big difference. It makes people feel a lot safer. And if you're going 21 miles per hour, the neighbors are in the front yard yelling at you. So it works. So how could we kind of work together with your department and council to increase that budget enough to where maybe systematically over the next few years we could get more of those neighborhoods to that speed limit?
Sure, I'm glad to talk about that a little bit. One thing that I'd like to do is give Stormwater some credit here, because we started having them build the speed humps in-house. What had happened was we were getting a contractor price of about $5,000 per hump installed. They would do it as part of the annual resurfacing program. We'd use that same contractor. And then all of a sudden they wanted $15,000 per hump. And we had this big backlog that was created because we couldn't afford that. And now Stormwater's building these humps for about $3,000 per hump. So that's really helped with the budget. Another approach that we've used to try to make sure that that $100,000 or the $150,000 is enough for neighborhood traffic calming is if we get a project that's a standalone that would eat up a lot of the budget, use Buster Hill Drive for an example, we went for and we worked in coordination with the council member to support an independent budget item ask just to cover that. And I think that moving forward, if we came up with, if we needed money for a speed limit reduction across the city, perhaps that's its own line item. But I'm also pleased to share with you that some of the grants that we had been awarded or told we were going to win under the previous federal administration that we thought would never happen, they seem to be happening. So that grant that you referred to is not dead.
Okay.
We're still working
That's good news.
with USDOT. And if we have time at the end, maybe we can give you an even bigger update on that, because we have 3 grants working through the federal contract process right now. And a couple of them I thought we had no chance, but it's worked out.
Well, that's good news. Thank you for that update. I think, Riviera Bay, obviously, they've been through a lot in the last year. 20-mile-per-hour speed limit was very important to them at one point. They've had to deal with other things. It will come back onto the radar. So maybe we'll, get some more good news. Maybe we'll invite you to a neighborhood meeting at the first of the year, and you can kind of share that update with them.
Sure, and I don't want to belabor this point too much, but David, can you talk about the strategy that we're using now to reduce the cost of signage in neighborhoods for changing speed limits?
So in 13th Street Heights and Campbell Park, we recently reduced the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour neighborhood-wide. And typically what you would have to do, if the speed limit is not 30 miles an hour, you'd have to sign every street. So instead, we came up with some customized signage that when you drive into the neighborhood at any entrance point, it says neighborhood 25 miles an hour unless otherwise posted. And then when you're exiting the neighborhood, there's a sign that says end neighborhood speed limit, similar to like an end school zone sign. So what that means is that unless you see another sign in the neighborhood telling you otherwise, it's 25 miles an hour unless you pass that end neighborhood speed limit sign. So that greatly reduces the number of signs required and brings down the cost.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah, because those signs, they add up quickly. So, well, that's great news. So moving on to proposed change number 3 with the petition. This was something I also experienced in one of my neighborhoods. You get the petition, everybody's like, yeah, sure, you can put it in front of my house. And then there's the pesky reflector markers that have to go up. And now those aren't in front of your house, those are in your yard potentially. And what I noticed was that kind of changed the conversation. Well, I'm fine with it out on the street. I don't want these markers in my yard, for whatever reason. So now you are proposing that we remove that piece completely from the petition. Do you see any unintended consequences with doing that?
Thank you. I think the biggest consequence was that we would see fewer successful petitions associated with it. I think people who might have been okay with driving over speed humps, but not one in front of their house or their driveway. If they don't have an option to say yes, but not here, then they're just going to vote no. So I think that's probably the most likely consequence.
Yeah, that concerns me a little bit. I mean, I actually was looking at it from, wanting to kind of beef up that language and be like, would you be okay with the speed hump and the reflective markers or whatever, however that verbiage would go, just so it's a little bit more clear, because I think of the one that we did in the neighborhood I live in, and I mean, we thought, well, if we aren't going to get anybody to agree to being allowed the markers, they can't have the speed hump, right? So I think that maybe could be a little bit more clear for individuals. I don't want us to make a change that could potentially have less success. So
I think we could, we're open for any discussion, but I think we can make it more clear that the hump comes with signs.
Yeah.
Because that is more clear, but we've just been put in several situations where you have too many people that they're good with traffic calming unless they have to have traffic calming.
Not in their front yard?
Right.
Yeah.
And then we have a problem with being able to design it in a way that meets standards. And it's to me it's a little bit I don't want to say hypocritical, but along those lines, like, I'm good with reducing speed, but I don't want any burden. And we will oftentimes put the humps, if we can, right on the property line, so it's kind of between two homes and not right out front somebody's front door or their window. It's off to the side a little bit. We do that with speed humps. We do that with as many signs as we can to minimize that impact. So I guess as it stands now, I would really still like to be able to make this change, but we can make it more clear of that signs come with the humps.
Okay. perfect. And then my last question, and actually maybe it's also a statement, is regarding the comp plan changes. I do agree. I think we learned that lesson on Fifth Avenue. So yeah, I think we should move forward with that. Any other changes in the FDOT, much talked about Green Book, that we feel like we need to dig into, or is it really just the comp plan that we need to look at?
It would just be the comp plan.
Just the comp plan?
In this instance.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for the work that you do. Always a pleasure having a presentation from you and working with you for our neighborhood. So thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Councilmember Harding.
Thank you, Chair. Evan, thank you very much. David, welcome. You guys informed me tremendously about this topic. Evan, I think you unwittingly just created NIMFY. Not gonna be hearing about that. There will be a meeting next Tuesday night. It's a little bit more complicated, but okay. That's your problem now.
Congratulations.
And Councilmember Gabbard touched on speed limits, and that was mine. We talked about vertical and horizontal, and horizontal's this way, right? Yeah.
It's like the shifts or the narrowing, the perception,
right,
rather than having to drive over.
I just want to make sure I was set for the test, but we didn't talk about the speed part of it. So it is within the purview of the city to change speed limits on roads that we control.
That's right.
And to lower them. And okay. And do we have any data on results of doing that? How does that, in other words, where does that fare in terms of other traffic calming measures?
We've done before and after studies with humps, and they're effective. In terms of just changing the speed limit, we know through other studies that we've reviewed, not necessarily our own, that if you reduce the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, you're not going to have a 5 mile an hour reduction in speed. You're going to have a more nominal reduction, something like 2 to 2.5 miles an hour. With that, but if you couple it with traffic calming, then you can definitely achieve the desired result.
Okay, all right. There have been a couple of requests. I wanted to get that story straight. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And one bit of clarification is, of course, the state does have some boundaries for us on setting the speed limits. There's a speed zoning manual. We can't have 10 mile an hour speed limits, for example. 20 is definitely the lowest we can go in certain situations for certain school zones, and in certain cases you can go down to 15. But generally speaking, anywhere from 20 to 30 in a neighborhood is within the city's purview.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Quite a few questions here. And I love how you take an individualized approach to which tool to use to solve which problem. Tell me about raised intersections versus raised crosswalks. And is there a cut and dry way that you decide which one is better? I like both. But I'm wondering, like, how do you decide which one is the best option?
I think it mostly depends on whether you're trying to safely accommodate frequent pedestrian crossings, or if you're just trying to calm traffic in a certain area.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you create a raised crosswalk that barely anybody's going to use, you might as well just create a speed table.
Mm-hmm.
And the speed, the raised intersections will help, like we talked about before, in all 4 directions. It costs more to implement, it's larger, but those are generally the 2 aspects. But Cheryl or David, if you want to add to that, please do.
Yeah, I think the raised intersections, you would spacing between the devices is really kind of critical and kind of a key determinative factor, right? So sometimes, and then driveways are also what is a big challenge for us in determining where we can locate tables and devices. So when we have a raised intersection, then we don't have driveway impacts and those kinds of things. But how far apart are the intersections that would allow that to be done? So generally, we're looking at trying to achieve spacing that's between 200, 250 feet to about 600 feet between the devices. So we would look to see what's most appropriate, and then again, what are the pedestrian generators? What are the sidewalk connections up to the crosswalks? And what is the general pedestrian activity? Does it make sense to have people cross here versus somewhere else?
Okay. So I'm thinking about two high pedestrian traffic areas. And these are two intersections we have where we had street murals removed. Grand Central and USF St. Pete. So let's use those as examples because we all know, and the science and the data tells us, that that was a tool to help make those intersections safer. We do not have that tool anymore. And so I'm wondering, out of the tools that we can use, is one of these the answer? And I'm thinking for USF St. Pete to have, what's the difference between a raised intersection and a speed table?
They generally have the same profile. It's just one's longer.
So
one covers the full intersection, and one is only 20 somewhat, 20 feet.
So and I don't want to get too much into like specific solutions, but I'm hoping that you're thinking about these things because safety is still the top priority. We lost the tool that we had. I'm hoping that we're looking at ways that we can implement other options to make those streets safer. That USF intersection with the students crossing so constantly, it really does make a difference. I use that intersection a lot myself, so it comes to mind. And then Grand Central just keeps getting more and more popular, and we've had incidents in the past there or at other intersections, and I'm hoping that there could be maybe a district-wide throughout the Grand Central District to figure out how to make that safer for pedestrians using whatever calming devices are best. So is that something that you all have had any conversations about, even among yourselves? Like, now what do we do?
To an extent, yeah, absolutely. We have had those conversations. I think in Grand Central in particular, there's a Grand Central master plan, and it did call for increasing the number of bulb outs, potentially looking at all-way stops. Now, there's certain criteria we'd have to meet in order to do all-way stops and stops on Central, which could be a little challenging for operations. But it did look at that, and we need to. It kind of goes back a little bit, I think, to the roadway classification and double checking and making sure that it's permissible for us to do a vertical device on a road like Central Avenue, right? So that's something that we would need to check. We did have some potential countermeasures that we were looking at 6th and 2nd, working with USF St. Pete's Police Department. So we've got some opportunities that we're kind of mulling about around there to kind of help improve safety for the students in that intersection as well.
So we can look into that further, but just quickly looking at the future major streets map, it looks like Grand Central Avenue is eligible for vertical traffic calming.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to move to the slide 33, the multifamily residential consideration. I have a concern about condos and apartments having one vote from the board or from the property management, because you're talking about a lot. So let's say it's an apartment building with 100 units. So you've got one vote representing 100 people, and if that complex takes up a block, and on the other side of the street are 4 single-family homes, 4 people can vote no or yes, and it affects 100 other people. You know what I mean? Like, there's a balance that I think needs to be struck. It's really difficult to get that many people to respond, but I worry, this is a current practice, so, but since it says that the changes are not being considered, I'm wondering if we can take a closer look at that. The example that comes to mind is the Lake Maggiore Apartments. So that's a newer apartment complex. It has around 300 units, something like that. Across the street from it, there's a mobile home park and a few other residences, small multifamily. So you've got very few votes total that affect hundreds of people.
Are you more concerned that it might be preclude the traffic calming from happening, or that traffic calming might happen that some of the people don't want, or is it both?
I think it could keep us from implementing traffic calming.
So if we required a vote from all 100, I think it would be hard to get to that 2/3 threshold. But I would also say, from my recollection, I'll see what you guys think, usually these places say yes. Have you had no's?
Most of them say yes.
So they're
Okay,
usually not.
so it's really not a
It
problem.
hasn't been a problem.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's just, want to make sure everyone gets heard on that. And with taking out that third option, the NIMFY option, it might help if on the petition somewhere is the plan, like where it would be, so that if yes or no are your only options, but you can see like a picture of where something is going to be put in, then they might vote yes because they can see that it's not right outside their front door.
So the petition process is much earlier than the design process. So I don't know if there's a practical way to do that.
We do use the results of the petition to inform the design to an extent too, at least currently with that not in front of my property option and with the no vote. So we, to the extent possible, we tailor the design to suit the results of the petition. So by planning a design early, we're basically saying where they're going to go without incorporating that feedback from residents.
Okay.
The county does it, or used to do it that way, where they would have an illustration on the back of the petition, and that's how they kind of work their program through.
Okay. And then I would be very supportive of a change to the comp plan. It just makes sense. So, that's all. Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Hanowitz?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for the presentation. So I'll start off with an item that Councilmember Gatbag and Councilmember Harding mentioned, which is proposed change number 1, the speed criterion. So can you just elaborate what the process is for neighborhoods to change to a 25 mile per hour? When I was a neighborhood president and Mike Jeffries, and we had this conversation, City Council had passed the blanket speed limit for the neighborhood that they can go ahead and go forward with a 25 mile per hour speed limit if they have the vote in the neighborhood. And so can you just kind of go over that process?
Yeah, I'll ask you to go. Sure. You're good.
Yeah, go ahead.
So to reduce the speed limit in a neighborhood, right now it's typically on request from, typically it starts with a resident and we ask them to get in touch with their association to make sure there's broader support. And if the association is supportive, we just do like an engineering analysis for that specific neighborhood and write a memorandum that's approved by engineering, and we're able to proceed. Typically it's not extremely complex if we're just dealing with neighborhood streets to go from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. It's really just a contextual check that 25 mile an hour speed limit makes sense. And we'll,
the zoning manual.
Yeah,
yeah, and that's in keeping with the
laws.
speed zoning.
And state laws allow for it.
Requires an engineering.
So one of the issues that came up was obviously the signs. You have to, there was a posting of all the signs. I know when we had this conversation in the neighborhood, people hate sign pollution. It's like, oh my God, there's signs everywhere. They want slow traffic down, but they don't want the signs. So I like that kind of balance that you all came up with finding a way to reduce the signs, which is good. But I'm just curious, and maybe we need to hear from legal and law enforcement. What are the requirements and from you all for the legal requirements for noticing a speed limit? Like, what is at a minimum that we have to be doing? Because you said there could be X amount of number on signs. Are there other ways or we could do it where we could say it in ordinance, like these are all the neighborhoods? I'm just curious of what are the mechanisms, because frankly, in our neighborhood, we have some streets that are 20 miles an hour because you have Crescent Lake Park, right? And if there was an opportunity to reduce signs and say, put X amount of signs and take away all the signs from the entrances of every street in Crescent Lake, I guarantee you the neighbors will want to do that. So having said that, I'm just curious of how you determine that. You see what I'm saying at? Because it's not clear sometimes what the entrances of neighborhoods are, and I want to make sure that the enforcement possibilities are there.
Yeah, so I'll start out by saying that if there's nothing posted, then the speed limit is 30 miles an hour.
Right.
And that the plan that we've come up with for the gateway signage, where it's just at the entrances and exits, that's as low as we can go. And I don't know if you'd want to hear from the traffic division about whether that could cause them extra problems. Like, I'm sure that the more signs there are, the easier it is for an officer to say, you just drove by a sign that said 25, versus if there's fewer. But so it's a balance, I think. But the plan we came up with is probably as light as we can go and still have enforcement.
No, and I get that. I'm just curious of like how the officers know what the neighborhood boundaries are and what the areas are, because as we know, it's not a box every time.
Right.
And it changes. Like Crescent Lake starts at 12th Avenue North. It doesn't start on the main street. In our neighborhood, it's 20. It may not be next door. So I'm really curious about that balance, and if there are ways where we can ensure that we can do what you're doing, still be able to enforce, whether it's making sure maybe it's part of an ordinance. And look, I don't need an answer today because I'm just bringing this up right now and you may not be prepared for it, and that's fine. But that's kind of where my mind is going to ensure that we can have enforcement. If it does require maybe having an ordinance, look, all these neighborhoods in our city, or having the boundaries or having the maps included. That's just kind of what I'm throwing out there. Because people don't like the signs in every street. It's just an added sign.
I don't think there's a need for an ordinance. If you want to see if Lieutenant Levy would like to address it now or another time.
That would be great.
Morning.
Good morning.
So when my officers go to court, they have to prove the burden of proof, right? Whether it's a magistrate or a judge.
Right.
So normally, typically, they will sit past the sign where the speed limit is, so they can have it where it is. You know, and like Evan said, the ordinance, if it's 30 miles an hour, if it's not posted. So from a legal standpoint, that's where we're at. We want to make sure we prove the case.
Right.
I understand your issue about sign pollution and to try to find that balance. The school zone is the best. Obviously, they sit within the speed limit sign and the flashing beacon, so there's no doubt about it. And they'll even laser it how far they're sitting.
Right.
So,
So at the end of the day, oh no, it answers my question. I mean, at the end of the day, having the sign on every street is the way you enforce it, because if you go to a courtroom,
right, if the judge or the magistrate asks, when the defendant says, I didn't know what the speed limit was, I didn't know, the magistrate's gonna ask the officer, where was it?
Right. No, it makes it easier, but they can't claim ignorance of the law either. So whatever, my point is getting rid of the ambiguity, whether it's by ordinance or by sign, could be ways where you can tackle the issue. You see what I mean? And they can't say, well, I'm ignorant of what the ordinance say. If the ordinance say this is a speed limit in the neighborhood, that may be a way where you can tackle less signs. And so I'm just throwing that out there, but that's kind of where I was getting at.
I understood.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's just something I want to kind of look at to see if that's a possibility to make sure if we can include something in the ordinances to ensure that we can enforce less signs. That's where I was going at. But I think this is great. I mean, FDOT wanting to have the raised sidewalks on the bigger roads is fantastic. I will say, and nobody's brought this up, traffic circles. So I'm curious of when you use traffic circles. I believe in historic Kenwood, there's some traffic circles.
That was that picture.
Huh?
That picture
right.
was.
And that's where the circles. I don't know if there's other places in the city, but I'm thinking of collector roads, like 30th Avenue North, between neighborhoods. We get a lot of complaints of those kind of bigger roads. They're not the biggest roads, but they're the bigger roads, and you get a lot of traffic on those roads. And I'm just wondering what you all think about traffic circles. Is it, something that people hate, very divisive? I don't want to bring up something that drives people crazy, but
They are divisive, and people in the United States can't seem to figure out how to
use them.
Whereas other countries,
yep, they use them all the time, and they're fantastic.
Even other states like Colorado use them a lot more than we do.
Yeah.
But they are very effective. The one that's closest to my house, the neighborhood refers to it as the circle of death. Even though there's never been a fatality at that intersection, people just don't tend to like them. But we're not afraid to use them in the appropriate context. Again, they need to be big enough. And then to build a large one, it gets very expensive. So that could be a separate line item. But I'll kick it to the traffic engineer and see what Cheryl would like to say.
Right-of-way constraints usually dictate whether we can use them or not. I like them. I think that they encourage yielding behavior. They generally put the crosswalks in a position that is, a little more advantageous. A lot of times, at all-way stops, you're seeing yielding behavior anyway. So it might, you put people at the right location and right angles and those kinds of things. But typically, right-of-way constraints will almost always kind of preclude us from doing them in a lot of locations where we would like to.
Right. And that's why I was thinking the collector roads, because they're a little bigger and they have some of those issues. I mean, somehow Sarasota managed to put traffic circles all over the place. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And there's older drivers there that have been driving for a long time, and that's a huge change in their driving behavior.
Yeah. FDOT has used them very successfully in certain locations. Managing traffic during construction of a circle is very, very difficult because people will build a perception about the circle based on their challenges with the maintenance of traffic. But usually we just find that it's very difficult because you might have right of way on one side of the street but not the other. Somebody's got some property over here. We have to acquire easements. It just starts to get it gets complicated in a hurry.
Okay. I was just wondering what your thoughts were, especially on collect roads. I've seen them as cities grow. They're using them more in more places, and they use them internationally, and I find them, once you get used to it, it seems like it's very safe.
They're great for sustainability too because there's no power needed for
right. You don't need the traffic signals or anything like that. So, well, thank you all for the presentation and for a lot of information here. Great work. Thank you, Chair.
Yep. Traffic circles have started to get more common in roundabouts. FDOT at Fort Pinellas, I want to say a couple years ago, pretty much said, this is just what we're going to do now. So it's getting a lot more common. Don't see anybody else, so I'll take an opportunity. First, thank you very much for this. I'll say I was inspired by seeing what other cities had done. There's been a couple of examples recently of cities taking traffic calming to the next level. And we talked in meetings about what Boston's done. I don't know if you got a chance to go look into that, but they've massively expanded traffic calming. So I'm really grateful for some of this. And one thing that hasn't come up, so I'll go right to it, is proposed change number 1, the speed on the speed humps. I think that this is sort of what most of my complaints are about, is people narrowly missing qualifying, and I'm really grateful for you addressing that. I will say one thing. You said 8 miles per hour above instead of 35, but then if you're like at a 30 mile per hour road, now you're asking for 38. People might not love that one. Like I might say like 35 or 8 miles per hour above, whichever is less. That's the, but other than that, like that's a really good change that I think would be really helpful and make it a lot easier for people to understand what exactly they're looking for. That oh well, actually, I take it back. It's still that 85th percentile thing that does like confuse people a little bit. And honestly, like, yeah, why don't y'all just say like 15% of people going faster than X speed limit? Like that seems a little more straightforward instead of like 85th percentile talk. But I'll leave that to you, that because that does get hung up.
Yeah, it is exactly the same thing, but we.
Yeah, it is. I know.
It's a standard term, but we could try to be
Yeah.
a little bit
Yeah.
more explanatory.
Yeah, I just get a lot of questions about that specifically, but I know it's the same thing, but I don't know. That's just my brain thinks a little differently. Maybe everybody else's doesn't. Okay. Okay, so we've actually talked about it a good bit, and it wasn't in the slides, but like, you know, speed limit changing, there's been talk of 20 is plenty. Just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that. In my opinion, it seems like, you can tell me if I'm wrong, like the study is a big limiting factor. Like we have to go do the study and it costs money and it takes time. Is that accurate?
Takes time is accurate. Fortunately, we have qualified engineers in our department.
Okay.
Who can perform the study. So David and Cheryl do that, not for free, but.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I bring it up because we talked about, yeah, nobody's going to work for free. But we talked about getting funding to do these studies in a couple of neighborhoods. That's what you and I had talked about. Is that?
Right. Well, I think we have time. Maybe now would be a good time. Well, first off, let me back up for a second.
Yeah.
Your idea of 8 miles an hour over or 35, whichever is easier to reach.
Mm-hmm.
If you all like that, we're amenable to that.
Okay.
That will, I think, help us avoid some other issues, including every neighborhood in the city that's 30 then say, well, then we want a 25 mile an hour limit. Because we're going to process those, but it does take time and money. So, right. We'll take the feedback as supportive of this. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about the incentive it might create if we were to do that. But yeah, okay.
So let me ask Cheryl to talk about the 3 grants. It's a good update, and the 20 is plenty for 3 neighborhoods to start off is included in that.
Yes.
And we do anticipate being able to bring you all those agreements as soon as we can finish those with USDOT.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, it's been a little slow going since as the change of administration has been pretty significant in their perspectives of the grants. So we do have our Complete Streets Implementation Plan update that we got through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, and that one we have brought to you. The funding agreement to council. Thank you all for your support. That's been approved. We wrote a scope for the plan update, and that took a little while to get approval from Federal Highways. But they've recently approved that scope of work, so now we're going to work with engineering and procurement to try and release the solicitations so that we can get a consultant on board to update our Complete Streets Implementation Plan and really move it forward to be a really as proactive as Complete Streets has been, but very reactive to a safety analysis and very keen on some data associated with safety for bicyclists, pedestrians, and all roadway users. So it'll look a little bit different in that it has a much higher level of crash analysis and particular countermeasures associated with that. So that's the first grant that we've got on Safe Streets and Roads for All. The second one we got on Safe Streets and Roads for All is the demonstration grant, and that's the one that I think that you are both kind of referencing with the neighborhood-wide speed limits and reducing them down to the 20 is plenty and doing kind of an experimental approach, reinforcing that new neighborhood-wide speed limit concept that we have kind of shepherded early with Campbell Park and 13th Street Heights that also have kind of limited entry points. So I think that the fact that they have limited entry points was also easy for us to try and test that concept a little bit more. That particular grant with Federal Highways, on the demonstration grant, we've been going back and forth on the template language, but I think we're nearing a point where Federal Highways is going to approve that. Once we have their approval, we'll bring it forward to City Council for your approval to enter into the funding agreement and get that work underway. It has the neighborhood-wide speed limits. It has some solar-powered street lighting on certain corridors to kind of give us some flexibility on that. It has some prefabricated raised crosswalks, curb extensions, some bike lane treatments, some better bike lane treatments. So it's got a lot packed into it. So we're super excited that we were able to retain the full scope of what we're anticipating, even with the change in the new administration. So good news on that front. The last one that we have was the Reconnecting Communities grant for the two-way conversion on 8th and ML King Street. We also did just get that draft funding agreement from Federal Highways and kicked that off with our grant staff about a week and a half ago with Federal Highways. So now we need to fill in the template agreement, make sure Federal Highways is comfortable with everything in it, and then we'll bring that forward so that we can start the planning for two-way conversion of 8th and ML King Street, basically through downtown. So, so that's the update on those three.
Oh, that is all really good stuff, actually. And I wasn't aware that like the demonstration stuff was so comprehensive. I had, and it's kind of what led me to asking the question, because I was kind of confused as to like why like going and seeking grants and doing all this study would be so big of a deal just to change a speed limit. I know that we have to do an engineering study, but then in my mind it was like, do a study. If we meet the qualifications to change it, you just like went out there with a wrench and some signs and swap the signs out. Like, I was like, why is this such a big deal? So I'm glad to see that it's more comprehensive, but I also think plenty of neighborhoods would be happy for you to just go out there with a sign and swap the signs out from 25 to 20. So I want to see us continue in that direction wherever we legally can. I just don't see a reason, like if we can get away with making your neighborhood speed limit 20, it makes legal and logical sense. Like, I mean, I just don't see why we wouldn't. It's going to make your neighborhood a safer place to walk around in, even if it's only like a couple of mile per hour reduction. And I'm glad to see a lot of my colleagues bring up a similar thing. So hopefully, I don't know what a path forward on that is, but we're just here today to like give you feedback and come up with what the next conversation is for this topic. So I think that sounds good. I'll go to the stuff about the comp plan and specifically the change for raised crosswalks on bigger roads. And that's actually something I was really excited to see. We talked about it before. I was really excited to see it because I do get people reaching out about, hey, I'm going to use an example in my district, 22nd Avenue North, like there's all this speeding and what can we do about it? And I just have never really had a tool that I could use other than like a major roadway change. And, this is still not as easy as putting in a speed hump, but it's not a major road. It's not redesigning the whole road. And so, Evan, you mentioned it before when we chatted. Want to say it out here, like, there's good examples, like with the hospital was a good example, but there's schools on these roads as well that could be a place where we could potentially do this. And I mentioned that because we talked about how there's multiple schools on 22nd Avenue North. So that's, I look forward to whatever work we have to do to be able to utilize that tool. And then I want to actually thank Councilmember Driscoll. It's just something my mind hadn't gone to when I was like, yeah, we're losing these traffic calmings. Like, I had been so caught up in the mural discussion that I was like, and I had known, like, yeah, we're losing traffic calming there, but I hadn't thought, like, how are we going to replace the traffic calming there? And that's really important. And you're right, especially in Grand Central, and, of course, right in front of the university. Yeah. Grand Central is a place we've been working really hard to calm traffic because just a handful of years ago there was like a spate of accidents there that killed pedestrians, and so I'm proud of the work that we've done there. And yeah, let's think about an easy way to get the traffic calming back that we lost as quickly as we can. And then I guess the last thing I'll mention is the proposed change. Well, I'll do two things, of course. Proposed change number 2 looks good. I like that it's less vibes based, although I like still the opportunity to do the vibes based if we need to. And then number 3, where you talk about the petitions. Yeah, this is an interesting potential change. And I feel like it's possible to get less people voting yes because of it. But, you know, philosophically, it's like, if everyone says yes but not in front of me, then it's just, honestly, like, yeah, I'm a big believer, like, we live in society, like, there are trade-offs to decisions that we make, and we, you know, do things collectively. And if that means, you know, you get it in front of your house, then you get it in front of your house. So I kind of support y'all changing it. But I am still open to the conversation, like clarity maybe in there, like we talked about. But if you want to change it to yes or no, like, we have to prioritize where we put these things and where we can put them most effectively. And I think this is a fair way to do it as well, is to take that away. So just figured I'd give you my feedback on that. That's all I have. I'm, again, really grateful to you all for giving us this. I think some of these things will just smooth things out a little bit more, and especially when neighborhoods are reaching out to us. The clarity, the slightly softening of barriers. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm really grateful to my colleagues for a good discussion as well. So we'll go back to Councilmember Gabbard and then Councilmember Harding. Did you?
Thank you, Chair. Just real quickly on the piece about removal of the traffic calming. I have some concerns about this, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up earlier. I almost forgot. Okay, so, you know, I was kind of comparing the process for when we get a traffic calming device, what the residents have to go through. And I do support that, you know, if it's been less than 5 years, sorry, like, we just installed it, we're not going to take it back, right? Does the resident in this proposal, would the resident who is making the request be required to go around with a petition to, like, almost like a reverse petition? Is that what the process would be?
I think that's what we would intend.
Okay. So they have to go to all of their neighbors and say, I don't like this. I want this gone, and I need you to sign this.
Yeah, let me add a little caveat. We've found that if there's a neighborhood champion that's willing to, you know, they're passionate enough about it, they want it enough that they're willing to walk the petition around, that petition has a lot better chance of passing than if we just mail it out.
Yeah.
But we have had situations where we will work with the neighborhood, or we will work with that champion that wants to see it done, but they're not comfortable doing it, or they had a bad experience for some reason. Then we'll say, well, we can mail it out, so we could do it for you, but the chances of it being approved will go down. So in this case, we would expect somebody to walk it around, but if there's extenuating circumstances, we can do a mailing.
Well, I would want there to be a mirrored process. So there's a process for getting one. I think that process should be the same for taking it away. And that was going to lead to my next question on the 75% of households is 3/4 on getting a device, right?
2/3 on
2/3. I'm sorry, 2/3.
So we're making it harder to remove.
Making it harder to remove, and that was my point. I wanted to make sure that it was either the same or harder to get rid of it. Okay. And then what was the reason for, if there's a request to get another one, the 7 years?
So if we've spent the time and the money to put the device in, and then the same street says we want to take it out, then now we want to wait a while before we would consider putting it back in. So we make it even longer. We're proposing 7 years, because we can't be going back to this.
No.
Put it in, take it out, put it in, take it out.
Okay. Well, I have a feeling if we mirror the process, I would be very interested to see how many of these devices would actually even get removed. Because, I mean, especially if it's only been 5 years, right? I mean, how much turnover do you really have in some of these neighborhoods? I don't know. I just want to make it as difficult as possible, if that makes sense. And I don't have a problem saying that publicly. I just feel like if the neighborhood has come together, because I've been through this process in my neighborhood, like it is not an easy process. And there takes a lot of kind of, community building to get these devices sometimes. I would just hate to see, one person be able to kind of lead that effort without it being just as difficult, if not more, to take it down.
Yeah, this is more difficult, and
Okay. Got it.
it's in the right place.
That's what I like. So thank you. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will say briefly, I've offered to my neighborhoods that have had speed humps qualify and they haven't gone and gotten the petition. I've said to them, I will go collect the petitions for you.
Yeah, I went with the
I'm
neighborhood
happy
champion.
to go door to door. It's like a thing that I do all the time.
Yeah.
I haven't had any of them take me up on it quite yet, so I'm hoping that they do, but yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to mention.
I went with the neighborhood champion, and it was a great way to reconnect
Yeah,
with some of the
definitely.
residents on that street. So, yeah.
All right, Councilmember Harding.
Thank you, Chair. Off topic, but we're all here. Evan, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but here we go anyway. Can you give us just a 40,000-foot view of how we're doing with the traffic preemption in the fire department and the system they're putting in with traffic lights? Or are you?
I don't know if.
I know we're working on it. I just didn't know how if we've gone anywhere with it yet.
I think other people are working on that besides.
Okay,
me.
all right. Yeah, no worries. Again, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just know it's out there. And
I think Marshall staff and the fire folks have been directly
I'll get with them.
communicating on that
Thank you
more
very much.
frequently. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Great. Yes, thank you. And, seeing no other committee members or council members, I will say thank you all for a very good meeting. We're at time for today. We're going to leave this item to come back based off of this feedback. Do you feel comfortable with that? I mean, I see Cheryl.
Yes, I think we could come back with a shorter follow-up and let you know where we landed with receiving your feedback and how we want to move forward.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then anything, that you need from us, it sounds like we're, after we've been given the information, we all are generally pointing in a similar direction. So I think we could come back if there's any action items. I think we could get them done.
Right, and I think some of these things that we proposed to change, that they're not an ordinance, that there's consensus on, we'll just change soon.
Okay, all right.
We don't. But other things like the comp plan, they're going to take.
Oh, of course,
more
yeah,
actions.
of course. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. We have our next Housing, Land Use, and Transportation Committee meeting on December 4th. We have a discussion on potential actions to appropriately recognize the historic significance of the Lincoln Cemetery and the Greenwood Cemetery. We also are going to have, it's not listed here, but just so you're aware, we're going to have confirmation of a couple of, Housing Authority members. It's an easy thing. I just wanted to mention it since it wasn't listed here. But that's all we have for today. So we're going to call today's Housing, Land Use, and Transportation Committee meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I call nature and I say, "Hi, I'm conserving water with my high efficiency tank." Okay, bye. Oh, hey, that's me. Just using my high efficiency washer. Just listen to the sounds of water being conserved. Go to this website to learn more, St. Pete, and do what you can for water conservation.
When I decided to transition and retire, and you had told me if I ever retire, you would like to throw your hat in the ring. And I said, there is no ring. And then I turned it over to the Board of Trustees, but I did give them this 411. Erica is an intelligent, credentialed person, working artist, but she's an artist. And I think that's important. And whatever degree of difference that is, how an artist approaches the thing, that's what I wanted. And you went through the process, and that's what the board agreed on. The future is always bright, but under your tutelage, it's going to be delicious.
I thank you for that.
No, because my generation, the baby boomers, we don't tend to get off the stage. You got to get the hook. Oh, there's always one other thing we can do, and I'm looking forward to that, seeing what's next.
I think we talked about it before, we have the same sentiment about the space and what our job is. My job is to maintain the heartbeat that has already been created in this space. I am not here to alter the heartbeat. I'm here to take this heartbeat and strengthen it and bring a bigger light so that the world can see it as much as I can, and to take that to whatever that next level is.
Well, as I told the Board of Trustees, we're getting an A+ candidate that you would normally have to scour nationally. And then she has the added thing of she knows this community and the community knows her.
I'm walking in the footsteps of a founder of an organization that is beloved, but I know that I gotta try it, and I know that we can do it.
My name is Niveen Naruz, and I'm a lead chemist in the Environmental Compliance Division Laboratory. Our lab here is a monitoring lab, so we test the water to make sure it meets the standards. It's Water Resources Department, so we test all the water resources within the city and outside the city to make sure it's safe for consumption or for recreational reasons, and make sure the community is safe and the environment in general is safe. After all, everyone needs water. So we test the drinking water from all over the city on a monthly basis. So every month we cover all the areas in the city. And also we do beach monitoring. We do the beaches on a weekly basis. We found that we have more control over the data, and we produce more reliable data in the lab here than the private labs. We make sure that all the water in the city is safe for you, your family, your pet, the animals, the aquatic life, to protect the water. I feel I'm giving back to the community as well. I do a lot of troubleshooting and problem solving. I'm like a scientist and detective as well, so it's very interesting. I really like my job because it actually has a real effect on people's lives. You know, like no one can live without water.
PCCA, Gibbs High, was high school that was invented because initially black people didn't go much beyond the 6th or 7th grade. And they created it, and then they put this performing arts magnet there. And I remember the first time I went there, just the art in the hallways that was from students, very sophisticated. And I thought, who wouldn't want a job there teaching motivated, talented young people? And obviously you were called because you taught. How long did you teach at Gibbs?
I believe I taught for 9 years, 8 or 9 years. Yeah, a long time. I think teaching at PCCA for those years made me a better artist. Working with young artists and inspiring young artists. But beyond the inspiration, teaching them how to coexist as artists in the community. They did not seek artists who were teachers. First, you didn't have to have a teaching degree to work in the magnet.
I didn't know that.
No, they wanted you to be an artist first. So you came with your artist degree or your art, and then from there, once you were inside, because I didn't have a teaching degree, once you were inside, once you got hired, then they put you through, Pinellas County School District has a phenomenal program so that you could get your teaching license. They wanted all of their educators to be working in the community so that their students had the opportunity to network and with the community members so that it strengthens the school and it also strengthens the community. And I think that was very important. I think it's a pivotal part.
Welcome everyone to the Public Services and Infrastructure Committee meeting of November 6, 2025. Clerk, can I please have a roll call?
Hanowitz.
Here.
Curtis.
Here.
Floyd.
Here.
Harding.
We have an agenda before us. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have for approval the October 9th, 2025 minutes. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, welcome everyone. We have a full room here today. This is a continuing conversation on the possibility of issuance of a general obligation bond to pay for water resources and stormwater improvements. We have Tom Green, who is on video today. That's not typical, but he's feeling under the weather. So welcome, Tom. I believe you're going to kick us off on this conversation.
Yes, ma'am, and Madam Chair, thank you for the flexibility to participate this way. I'm not feeling well, didn't want to spread my germs around everybody in City Hall.
We all appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
We appreciate it, yes.
But I did want to take a moment, Madam Chair, you kind of set it up perfectly. This is a continuation of a discussion that we started, I think, in BF&T, and it was really part of the overall rate setting process for the utility. And, this came out of, how are we going to fund the SPAR projects going forward? So this is a continuation of that conversation. I did want to briefly mention some of the professionals who we have in the room with us today. I know Chris Rowe from Bryant Miller and Olive, our special counsel on this potential general obligation process. Also, Jay Glover, our financial advisor from PFM, is in the room. So we've got folks from the outside who could help address questions that the committee might have. And with that as a brief overview, Madam Chair, maybe I'll kick it back to you or to Claude. I think Claude was going to cover the first couple of slides in our slide deck.
Yes, so we have Claude and Erica here. Thank you all for being here. So I believe, Claude, you're starting off the presentation.
And so this part of the presentation will be relatively short because we've talked about these during the summer, but we did want to remind everybody that we're looking to do this general obligation bond so we can advance projects in both the stormwater utility, the water utility, and the wastewater utility. One of the things that we are working on now, and this is a draft, is to put together a dashboard for people to use and to educate the public and to provide public outreach and to receive public feedback on what the projects are, where they can be located. This will be an interactive type of dashboard that the public can go in when we publish it and look at where the projects are located, what they are, what the benefit may be, and the proposed budget for those projects. Next slide, please. And then to reiterate the conversations we had this summer, the projects do cover a variety of water, wastewater, stormwater projects over the next 4 fiscal years, fiscal year 27 through 30, with a total combined estimated value at this point of about $614 million. And the GEO bond would be borrowing $589 million of that need to tackle these projects. Any questions on the projects?
Committee members or council members? I don't see, no, they want you to continue.
Excellent. Well, I will pick up here. Thanks, Claude. And some of these next slides we've reviewed before, but it is important to kind of get everybody on the same page with respect to how a general obligation bond works. Effectively, if the voters approve the projects at a referendum, we would pledge what's called the full faith and credit of the city of St. Petersburg, meaning we could levy ad valorem taxes to pay back not only the principal but the interest on an annual basis of the project or the bonds issued to finance the projects approved. And this is, and if you can go to the next slide, I think that would be helpful. Okay, so this, if the voters approve the referendum, we would add a debt millage rate. Currently, we don't have a debt millage rate because we don't have any general obligation bonds outstanding. But if the voters approve it, it would show up on their trim notice as a separate column in addition to what we currently levy for operations, which is the 6.4525. So that operations continues, you know, every year at whatever level council and the mayor set that millage rate at. And then the debt millage rate is added in a different column in addition to the operating. So I wanted to make sure everybody understood that that is a new voted debt that would be available to pay debt service on bonds. Okay, next slide, please. And so, you know, we've talked about why use a general obligation bond. You know, clearly, you know, spreading the debt over a different universe of ratepayers would have a couple of different impacts. First, it would reduce the pressure on the ratepayers, or the pressure to increase rates immediately to cover those expenses associated with the SPAR, and spread it over a different universe of landowners as opposed to ratepayers. So it is a different universe. Very much, there's a lot of overlap in those two universes, but it is a different methodology, and it would allow us to increase resiliency in our community. And the theory is that increased resiliency is going to increase property values of everybody in the city. So it's a good way to finance these projects. So Ian, if you could go to the next slide. The last time we were all together at BF&T, we had just pulled out a small handful of cities and counties and school districts who had used general obligation bonds over the last 4 or 5 years. Following up to that meeting, we did send this more complete list. I shouldn't say it's a complete list, but this just gives a flavor of the different communities who have used general obligation in Florida. You know, you can see Manatee County, you can see Pasco County, and there are a lot of different reasons and purposes. That some is environmental protection, some's parks and recreation. So it's really dependent on the community need, so to speak, rather than any real consistent theme for general obligation use. But we did just want to share that a more complete list, and you can see this is going back to 2020 through 2024, and again, it's very diverse. A lot of different areas of the state have used general obligation. All right, next slide, Ann. And again. Now, this is where we start to get into some of the math of how we went about comparing funding SPAR through the utility versus funding SPAR through a potential general obligation bond. And just to orient everybody, these slides are probably familiar. These were in the FY26 rate study. This one illustrates the stormwater rates. And in the top box, or top rectangle box going left to right, that is the base rates that we forecast that we would need to implement to provide for the operations and the normal CIP of the stormwater utility. So that would be, so you can think of this two ways. You can think of this as we're funding SPAR 100%, or you can think of we're funding zero of SPAR, right? So it's kind of, but that's just the baseline. We're going to have those increases and those rates regardless of what happens with SPAR. The below boxes with scenario B, C, and D looked at if we wanted to fund the $589 million that Claude referenced earlier for the SPAR projects. The first scenario B says if we funded 100% debt from the utility, so we borrowed $589 million to fund SPAR, those are the rate increases that we would have to implement in those years. And then with C, similarly, that's a 75% debt, 25% cash, so to speak. And then scenario D is our current fiscal policy where we fund water and stormwater capital projects on a 50-50 basis. So that scenario illustrates the rate increases needed to fund SPAR at a 50-50, 50 debt, 50 cash on hand. And then the next slide, and if you could go to that, is the water and sewer rates. Exactly the same analysis here. where you've got the base rates for water, and then you've got the scenarios B, C, and D below, assuming 100% debt funding through the utility, 75% debt funding at the utility in C, and then 50-50 split in scenario D. All right, next slide again. Now we're going to look at the tax base, and I think we summarized some of this in the cover memo to this document. You know, the last time we had a conversation about the GO, we were using tax year 24 data. Now we have the tax year 25 data, which is the information that we use to fund the FY26 budget. So Ann, if you could scroll to the next, thank you. So this just breaks down at a very high level homesteaded properties versus non-homesteaded properties. And the math has changed here just a little bit. But you can see here that homesteaded properties on a count basis represent about 58% of the total properties are homesteaded. But the value, the taxable municipal value, is about 38%. And I think last time we looked at this, it was more like just a touch different. I think it was 60-40 in that area. And then if you look at the non-homesteaded properties, you know, they're 42% of the count, but make up 62% of the value. So what that tells us is that it is going to be more challenging for non-homesteaded properties to see a benefit from the general obligation route versus the utility rates. And we'll get into that in just a minute, but that's a quick takeaway that I thought I would share. And so this summarizes what we kind of went through on a couple of previous slides from the rate study. And what we've tried to capture here is the annualized utility rate increase that would have to happen to fund SPAR versus doing it with the general obligation. And so the number here that I want to make sure I point out is the 50% public utility and 50% cash. So, and we'll go through the methodology in just a moment, but on an annualized basis, we estimate that ratepayers, assuming the assumptions that we will discuss, would pay $486.12 more annually to fund SPAR through a 50-50 split if we funded all through the utility. So that's the important number I want you to highlight or keep in your mind, the 486.12. All right, if you could go to the next slide. So here are some of the other assumptions for purposes of comparison. And, you know, there are thousands of different, you know, iterations that we could go through. So we tried to keep this consistent from our last discussion. So we used the typical Tier 2 rate in 2030 and compared it to the B, C, and D scenario. For the that's for stormwater. And then for the water rates, we used a 3,500 gallon monthly assumption. And then we go through the process of comparing that to a general obligation pledge. And then for the bonds, if we were to issue general obligation bonds, and just to keep it really simple, we assumed a 30-year bond, 4.5% interest, and then we would estimate that we would borrow the $589 million, which we talked about earlier. 246 would be for stormwater, while 343 million would be for water and wastewater. So if you could go to the next. Now this is kind of I wanted to make sure we spent just a moment on the methodology so that everybody understood. So we took, on slide 10 from the rate study, we annualized the difference between the FY30 rate in scenario A, which was $30.07, and took the difference between what the SPAR rate or the 50-50 rate would be in scenario D in 2030. So that was $48.66. So below at the bottom of this slide, you just see the simple math. We took the $48.66, that's the rate we would need to fund SPAR on a 50-50 basis. and reduced it by what we know we're already going to have ratepayers cover, which is the $30.07. And that yields a $18.59 monthly increase to fund SPAR. And then we simply multiplied that by 12 to come up with a $223.08. So on an annual basis, we would estimate that an average or a tier 2 stormwater customer would pay $223.08 more to fund the SPAR program. Now if we could go to the next one. Now this is the same kind of straightforward calculation with the water side. So in 2030, we had $133.99 for the base rate to support the operations of water and the base CIP program. To fund the SPAR, the monthly rate would have to be $155.91. So we did that same math here, where we took the $155.99 and reduced it by $133.99 again, what we know we're going to have ratepayers cover, and came up with a monthly difference of $21.92. And then we simply multiplied that monthly difference by 12 to get to $263.04. So that is the annualized difference if we had a 50-50 split and had the utilities, the water utility fund the SPAR program. And then this slide brings it all together. This just shows the annualized stormwater increase of $223.08 and the annualized water increase of $263.04. And so there's that number I asked you to keep in mind, the $486.12, because that is what we would expect that customer who is a tier 2 stormwater and uses 3,500 gallons of consumption on a monthly basis. That is the increase that they would have to cover to fund the entirety of SPAR. Now if we could go to the next, and then, excuse me. Now, Ian, I think you were going to pick up here, right? Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to help Tom's voice a little bit. Okay, so Tom kind of really explained well, I think, the methodology and how we came up with those differences. And what we have is we have various scenarios that we apply those to. Again, scenario A is using and funding SPAR using 100% debt backed by a general obligation bond, okay? And again, we do have the ability to, we could use that for major capital improvements, having a public purpose. So again, those such as the SPAR program and are backed by the ad valorem taxes. That can be used to reduce the burden on utility rates. Okay, the cash funding, as we're talking about with the 50-50 funding, that's not applicable to the GO because that GO is a full faith and credit, meaning that annually that millage is set to make the debt payment. Okay, so we know the millage that would be, that we're only projecting millage, but that would be based upon final numbers on what that, once we issue debt, what those rates would be. Now for scenario B, then that is you issuing it through the public utility, but 100% debt funding. What this is this is not current policy. So this is, the results is, as we saw, we can have a result in a large utility bill increase of 37% overall. Now for the water, sewer, and reclaimed utility portion, it's approximately a 36% increase over 4 years from fiscal year to 30. The stormwater utility portion is about a 56% increase over 4 years from fiscal year 27 to 30. Now I want to discuss the last thing a little bit. If we issue 100% for the SPAR through the public utility, that also may have negative ratings implications for the public utility due to the affordability comparisons and 100% reliance on utility debt. As some of you may know here, when we developed our fiscal policies with the 50-50 funding, we did that for a reason, because we were highly leveraged in the past, okay, 10 plus years ago, we were highly leveraged we were issuing nearly 100% utility debt. We as a city and a city council and administration all came together and really took several years to get there, but we really committed to the 50-50 cash versus debt funding. And that has really helped the city being able to reduce the cost of financing. Because just like on a personal level with your credit rating, the higher the credit rating from the city, the lower we're gonna pay an interest cost. When we're looking at a 30-year debt, that's millions of dollars in difference, versus, you know, like when you're looking at your current mortgage of your home, just multiply that out to the dollar amount that we're going out. And so we're talking millions of dollars in implications for higher interest rates if the credit rating is lowered because of the additional debt. For scenario C then, you know, that's a modification that out of our current policy that was saying, okay, we would do 75% debt funding and 25% cash funding. That also resorted to large utility big increases, and again, a 44% increase over the 4 years, a 73% increase over the 4 years for the stormwater, and it may have a negative rating implications for the public utility for the same reasons, but a little less issue is better to be 20-75 than 100% reliant on debt. So again, that is scenario C. And then scenario D is our current policy. This is our 50-50 funding policy. And again, we still have a large utility increases, okay? We see of approximately 55%. The water sewer reclaimed is a 53% increase over 4 years. The stormwater utility is 109% increase over 4 years. Pretty substantial increases. Even if we did that, we still may have some negative ratings implications relating to affordability, okay? As that's part of the ratings criteria for the public utilities credit rating. So what we did is we took that property file, okay, from the 2025 Pinellas County property appraisers, downloaded it, 108,000 lines, properties, lots of details. So we were able to do a lot of analytics with that. So we added a lot of computations underneath of that, and bottom line, here's where we come out, okay? Our model, using the current SPAR program issued annually through a GO, in 2030, we would expect the GO bond to be a 0.96 mil, just a little bit less than 1 mil. That's based upon the current fiscal year, the current 2025 valuation with 2% annual increases in valuations and that 4.5% interest rate, and then the annual issuance of that general obligation debt. So that would build over each year as that debt is issued. But in 2030, when all of the debt would be issued, it would be just under a mil. We also did some analytics on our database here. We determined that the average municipal value, meaning the municipal value is what the city of St. Petersburg collects taxes off, that base. The average muni value is $328,070, okay, would pay in 2030 towards the GO debt in the amount of $314.95, okay, compared to an estimated $486.12 in estimated additional utility charges to fund the SPAR using scenario D. What we also know, and Tom mentioned at the beginning, is that homesteaded properties with lower municipal value ranges benefit more than non-homesteaded properties at the higher municipal taxable value ranges. Then we turned all these numbers and determined that, in our opinion, based upon the data that we have available, the GO bond is more cost effective for the following. Okay, for scenario B, okay, which is 100% utility bond, and we're not adding in the additional cost of interest that might happen on a bond downgrade. The only thing we're looking at is the utility rates versus okay, versus the 2030 estimated GO cost. So in scenario B, 48,452. Remember, we had 108,000 properties total. But about 45% of homesteaded and non-homesteaded, the GO bond is more effective for that scenario. For scenario C, 78,641, or 73%. we find and determine that the GO bond is more cost effective. When we run scenario D, which is our current policy, we get 95,996, or 89% of homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties would benefit from the GO. We also looked at this from a median perspective, okay? Just because we have this big database, we could actually do some computations. The median of municipal tax value is $165,098 for all properties, compared to an average muni value of $328,000. Interesting statistics there, okay? The median estimated tax required in 2030 to fund the general obligation bond program is $158.48 for all properties. That's the median. The estimated rate increases to fund the program using public utility rate increases, again, at the 3,500 gallons monthly water usage in Tier 2 stormwaters is $486.12. And again, in 2030 to fund the SPAR program. Now this is really fun because now we get into more numbers. Okay. I'm not going to get into all the details, but we want you to actually be able to just see the model and how it worked and compare to the bottom line. Okay. And these are actual using that database and using the actual muni values of those particular properties. So this kind of tells us who really benefits in this. So when we compare to, we're going to compare using scenario D because scenario D is our current policy. Okay. So when we use the homesteaded properties, we have 56,917 homesteaded properties in scenario D. The municipal value of that is just a little over of $8 billion. Okay. So what we do that then is how much would those property owners have to pay, and from a dollar amount of a public utility SPAR increase. Okay, that's using the utility bonds. Okay, but the SPAR increase would be $27,668,492, and just if you'd like to do the math, that's 56,917 times 486.12. Okay. When we compare it to scenario A, then the total GO, when we're comparing it, is how much then would we have to pay in GO for that group of people? It's about $8.9 million. Well, if we take the 27 million minus the 8.9 million, we get $19.9 million, what I'm going to call in GO benefit. So it just kind of shows which property owners are benefiting or non-benefiting. Okay. So we do the same thing for and again, the first ones are these are those who are benefiting. Okay. The next one is the non-homesteaded properties that are benefiting. There's 39,079. Okay, just like the other that's about a $7.7 billion muni value. So using that same number multiplied by that 486.12, we're about 18.9 million. Okay, compared then to the GO that those property is estimated to be paying. Okay, of 7.4 million. So we have about $11.59 million benefit for the non-homesteaders who benefit from the GO. So the total of that totals that $95,996. But as Tom pointed out, that of those benefiting, the muni value is about 15.7 billion. Okay, the dollar amount for the SPAR using the public utility, okay, is about 46.6 million. But if we do the GO for those same people will be paying 16.3 million, meaning a $31.5 million GO benefit to those homesteaded and non-homesteaded properties that benefit from the GO based upon the model. So who doesn't benefit? Okay, there's 12,210 properties that, based on our calculations, don't benefit. What you're looking at right here is the muni value of those. Those are very high muni value, meaning of all of those 96,000 properties, that's a $15.7 billion muni value. The 12,210 have the value then of 19.7 billion. Okay? So compared to then to the public utility SPAR increase, then those in that category, they would be paying $17.7 million. So their benefit is a negative 13 million. And then when we total all properties, that's how we get to the totals for 108,206. So what we estimate is the public utility increase would be 52.6 million. The total GO of 34 million, and the benefit from all then is the net of those two, which is $18.5 million. Okay, and again, this is based upon our scenarios and assumptions that we did. Now, also remember those properties not benefiting from the GO, we're only using 486.12 for their public utility rate. Those may be underneath of there. Those may be very large users. Okay, we're using an average rate. We're not using each individual property's public utility bill. We are using the average as you saw from that model. So we actually may be underestimating then their benefit based upon when you compare to their actual utility bill, which may be much higher than, we'll call this average increase of 486.12, because we are using those lower tiers. Any questions so far on this math? Okay. So then we took this a little further. Okay. I took all those properties, we took all those properties that are that file that we have, and we ranked them based upon we ranked them based upon their muni value in groups. Okay. So we wanted to see who of all of those benefiting, okay, who is benefiting and at what number of properties and at what ranking they have. Okay, so you can see then we have muni taxable value of 100,000 and below. Okay, and again, this is using the property appraiser's information that we downloaded. There were 27,236 properties with about a $1.1 billion value. Okay, their public utility SPAR increase was about 13 million, but their GO, what they would be paying on the GO is about $1 million. Okay, so they really are gonna benefit those with the lowest property values. So that's what we show there, and we take it all the way up. Again, these are the ones that benefit. Okay, the ones that don't benefit, you're gonna find they're in the highest rankings, well above 600,000 in valuations, some of those properties. But again, that strata kind of tells us who would be affected, how, and who would benefit. Any questions on the numbers? Well, we're gonna talk about the schedule then, okay? Assuming
Not right
if we want to continue.
I think what we're going to end up doing is just taking questions at the end. You can go on.
Okay, sure.
It's pretty heavy, and once we get into a question, it'll just be sidetracked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get through the numbers. This part is the schedule, okay? So, again, we have City Council confirm the appointment of special legal counsel. Chris Rowe is in the room, and he's also available for questions. Then what our next step is late 2025, early 2026, that legal counsel prepares the draft referendum, resolution calling for a referendum to authorize the GO bonds. In the first quarter, then, we would be finalizing that list of projects, and I'll let Claude talk more to that as we, if you want to point out anything more on that projects list that may be have that interaction, public input.
So we are developing a very robust outreach program that we will be bringing to you guys, to the public, to talk about this program. That we're going to be doing a lot of that outreach in the first part of next year. And that outreach will allow us to discuss the projects we have that we are proposing, get feedback from the public on those projects, make adjustment as necessary so that when we decide to go to, the vote for whether we go to a referendum or not, we have an understanding of the public's feedback on the program.
Thank you, Claude, for that. But again, we'll have to finalize that list of projects in order to then get the language ready for the ballot questions. April and May, then we finalize that referendum resolution and submit the agenda package for discussion, typically at BF&T or whatever committee it may be in. And again, that would be April, May of 2026. Then September and October, we have certain legal requirements on publications. And also then the legal counsel would start drafting that bond authorizing resolution. November 3rd, 2026, then the bond referendum would be considered by the voters. We would then finalize the bond authorizing resolution. Then, assuming that we're successful in the referendum in mid-November 2026, and then late November, early December 2026, City Council would consider the bond authorizing resolution. We can do a bond validation process schedule within there. So the pre-closing and closing on that first series would be early second quarter 2027. Okay, I just want to let you know there are we had some additional pages in there of details of numbers, okay, that we added as supplemental information, but we just thought it was just a little bit too much to be bringing all of that information in there, but it is there if there's an evening that you have extra time and you're tired and can't complete. Okay, you can review that, but that is the end of the presentation.
And I believe there's not going to be complaints that there is a lack of information for us to consider here. So thank you for all of that. It's a lot of information. It's very involved. And I just want to, and maybe whoever can best answer this, at the end of the day, when you do this financial analysis, what should we take from it? Is it the most financially prudent thing to go with Go Bonds based on what we're talking about? I just want a simple, yes. What is the simplest way to say this for everyone? Because that was a lot.
This is why I have Erica at the table.
Erica.
As well. Okay, so, as we prepared that model, we want Erica.
Yeah, so I have, Anne was preparing the model and I was reviewing as another set of eyes and really putting our heads together to look at it. That's also why we have the appendixes in the back. So there's the different scenarios, B and C, that we don't recommend, but we wanted to do that analysis and put that out there for you to see those possibilities as well. That this aren't best practice, they're not our fiscal policy. I think the numbers do show you the picture that if you're looking at equitable distribution of the cost of the system, it does make sense to go with the Go Bonds. You see the benefits by the property, municipal taxable value. So I think the Go Bond, would be a really good for our long-term bond ratings and for fiscal policy and some, equitable distribution of the costs across the city, especially with the interesting data you see with percentage of homesteaded and non-homesteaded. I know there's a lot of unknowns with property taxes in the next year, but I still think that this is going with the GO bonds is really a fine foundation. We haven't done it in a long time. You see the other cities out there doing it for a lot of needs, and there's a lot of interest in residents having the say, going out and vote, and want to see that impact in their community through that method.
Okay. Well, with that said, committee members, I believe Councilmember Floyd was the first one I saw.
Thank you. Thank you for the detailed analysis. That's the first thing I would say. And then I'll get on my soapbox a little bit and just say, every year for like the first 3 or 4 years I was here, I made a point that was, as we lowered the millage rate and cut property taxes, but raised utility rates, it was an unequitable distribution of the total burden that we put on our residents, because property taxes are a relatively progressive thing and the utility rates are more like a flat tax, and often regressive in that they put the most burden on, they put a larger percentage burden on people with less wealth, less income, less property value. So I'm glad to see that us showing that if we move the burden towards property owners and we continue and we compare that to our existing strategies as to funding our utilities, that we could literally lower the impact to what it looks like 89% of properties in our city, which means 89% of families in our city. This is a really creative and forward-thinking way to figure out how to pay for what is a large burden in our city when it comes to our utilities and our infrastructure specifically. So I'm really grateful to see this work out this way, and I think, you know, if we do move forward with something like this, it's going to be on all of us to explain what is complicated and full of numbers to our residents in a simple way. And I think that's why Vice Chair Hanowitz asked that question right at the end. We have to explain that, like, this is going to benefit 89% of properties in our city, 89% of households in our city. I know that doesn't equivalent like or one-to-one, but it's basically. So I'm really glad to see the level of depth that you put forward here, and I just want to say thank you, and I'm glad to see what the outcome's been, and I'm going to continue to be supportive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gabbard.
Thank you. I'm not a committee member, so I would wait.
No one else has,
Okay.
is there?
All right.
I'm doing math.
You're doing math?
Oh, well.
Okay, I see him busy over there, so.
Yeah,
yes.
well, I'm not doing math. And maybe I'll like kind of piggyback a little bit on the jump on our soapbox statement, right? Because, I mean, thank you for this very, very detailed explanation. And I do agree, the communication is going to be very, very important. And, you know, understanding that when these referendums come up, it is our job to educate. It's not our job to advocate. It is our job to educate. How do we do that? All right, so we are bringing in for a landing very, very quickly. We have our last meeting with the stakeholders for the Resilient St. Pete Action Plan. The Resilient St. Pete Action Plan has been an ongoing process for, my gosh, over a year or more of resident feedback as to what they want to see happen in their communities, in the neighborhoods that have been most affected by stormwater specifically. And so for me, we're bringing this plan in for a landing. Like I said, November 18th is the final stakeholder meeting. They'll take the final feedback from residents. They will then deliver the final product that is going to live on our website as a story map process that everyone will be able to go and they will be able to see and relate to projects that need to happen in these neighborhoods. For me, that looks like the framework of education. So Claude, can you talk a little bit about the prioritization of projects, how we can take the Resilient St. Pete Action Plan and we can really kind of catalyze that to educate people on SPAR? How can this all work together? Because these things cannot live in separate silos. They have to come together, and I believe whenever we bring this to City Council, they're going to see a lot of this framework is already there for our platform of education.
Yes, thank you. And we're actually really excited about that story map framework. And we are talking about how it won't become static, that we can expand it and grow and make it more user-friendly and provide more information and to be updated on a regular basis. The way that the projects in SPAR were prioritized, and I believe that may be what you were asking.
Part of the question.
Yes. The way the projects were prioritized in SPAR were based on several criteria. One, we looked at projects that were in the stormwater master plan that had higher scores. And if those projects were well enough defined that we felt we could move them forward quickly, we put those into SPAR. And then we recognized last year from the storms that there were some areas that suffered from flooding, particularly during Milton, that had projects in the stormwater master plan that may not have been as highly ranked, or they didn't have projects in the stormwater master plan at all, and we need to develop something for them. So we included those also in the SPAR, recognizing that they are right now not well fleshed out, and so we would need to spend some time to, put the energy and effort into fleshing those out. So that's how we prioritize the ones on the stormwater side. On the wastewater and water side, we prioritize those projects that would allow us to make sure that our utilities are hardened enough to handle a storm similar to what we had last year with Helene and with Milton, and even frankly with Debbie. And so we're looking at ways to make sure that we can keep the plants running during a storm, during a storm surge. We looked at ways that we can try to reduce the sanitary sewer overflows that come from that addition of a lot of water that comes in from those storms. We looked at ways to make sure that our water system can be as reliable as possible. And so that's how those projects were prioritized. Some of those projects, well, actually most of those projects were projects that we were looking at to start sometime within the next 5 years. And so what we're looking to do is just accelerate it. So if it was a project that was expected to take from year 4 through year 7, we're looking to accelerate it up so that it's done all before the first 5 years. And then others were projects that we may have just accelerated forward completely out of years 6 through 10. So that's the process we use to come up with that list.
Okay. And I was trying to go back and flip through the slide presentation again, so you may be able to find it faster than I can. But can you go back and remind us, so that split between stormwater, wastewater, potable, I don't know, I think we're kind of putting that into the water resources piece.
Yes.
What is the total amount? There they are, the total amount of those projects. So talk to me about on the GEO bonds for stormwater SPAR, the $246 million.
Yes.
We've been telling our residents for quite some time that we have a $700 million, that number changes here or there, but it lives around that amount, stormwater master plan.
Right.
When residents say, okay, you're asking us this, in my mind, I'm thinking they may believe that we're going to be able to fund this entire $700 million stormwater master plan. Right here, we're saying it's only $246 million for stormwater.
Correct.
How do we communicate that? And then what do we say when they say, well, it's obviously still not enough, right? How do we kind of navigate that?
So part of the communication will be that as we are working on this and as we're going forward over the next 5 years, we will still continue to progress our rates so that we get to the goal of spending $50 million a year. That's our goal, spending $50 million a year from the utility rates on CIP. Hopefully, maybe even beyond that, we can get better than that, but that's our goal, is to get to that. And so we'd always said that, at $50 million a year, we could do that stormwater master plan in about 15 to 20 years. So this will help us accelerate that and move forward. And then part of our outreach is going to be to get that feedback from the public. And if we're getting feedback that the desire is to do more on the stormwater, we can certainly look at doing that, recognizing it'll affect what we end up borrowing. But if we need to do that, we'll do that. We'll make the adjustment. We want to make sure that what we take to the public is something that they want, that they'll vote for. That's the bottom line.
And I think that starts to go into kind of my next line of questioning, and we've talked about this privately, so, you know, I don't want to belabor it too much, but, you know, we've spent a lot of money on wastewater, water resources over the consent order. You know, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent there. Basic investment in stormwater through that time period, now coming up on almost a decade. And so residents are saying, when is that shift? When is the shift to where we at least get to a place where we are a 50-50 split? Recognizing wastewater is unique because it's a health issue. You know, when people can't flush their toilets, that is a much more kind of daily issue occurrence versus stormwater. But I think we're seeing in a changing climate that stormwater is becoming more of a frequent issue. I mean, Chair Gertis and I were just in Charleston learning about all of their frequent flooding, you know, sunny day flooding. I woke up yesterday morning, turned on the news in Charleston, and they were saying that they had a street flooding warning up until like 9 a.m. And it was a bright, sunny, beautiful day. This is going to be our reality more and more and more as we're spending this 30-year bond. So when are we going to get to a place where it's a 50-50 split finally? And that we make stormwater the sexy topic that nobody wants it to be, and we actually get all of this work done in a much more focused and well-divided prioritization?
So I believe that we have made the shift, and if we need to express it more often, we will, towards stormwater being the focus for us, for public works. But I think it is I would respectfully say that I don't think we'll ever be able to get to 50-50 on the dollar value, only because the two systems are completely different in their value. We've got 1,500 miles of wastewater pipes. We have another 1,500 miles of water pipes. We've got 4 treatment plants on the wastewater side. On the stormwater side, we've got 550 miles of pipes. And so the two systems are different. Both systems, we need to invest in them repeatedly to make sure that they are replaced when they age out. They have similar age out years. And so I really don't think from a dollar value we'll ever see a 50-50.
So this is going to be an important communication piece.
Yes.
We're going to have to make sure that that is very clearly laid out for people because individuals are still experiencing a lot of, you know, PTSD from what happened last year, and we're going into that next year, and we're asking them to vote on this, and I think we need to be really clear about what those expectations are.
Sure.
So I think I'll leave it there for now. I might come back around.
Okay. Chair Gertis, Councilmember Harding, you guys pick each other. You guys were both at the same time, and I'm not doing that.
So if we send this out and if it passes, what tax year does it actually take effect?
In order, we would issue the bonds during a calendar year, first quarter calendar year 2027.
Okay.
So after and Chris is here, okay, if you want to answer the timing on after the passage on when the actual percentage will come in the millage.
Sure, unless City Council determined otherwise, the first levy under the GO bond would appear on the November 2027 tax bill.
Okay, thank you. And then it's set up to just fall off when the debt is satisfied?
That's how it works, yes.
Now, typically what happens with a general obligation bond, particularly one of this size, is you wouldn't borrow the full amount that you need right up front. You'd borrow in a series of tranches over time as you need the money for projects. And each borrowing would itself have a 30-year lifespan. So if you don't borrow until, you use up all your capacity until the 10th year, you'd have 30 years from that 10th year to repay that particular series of bonds. So over time, you could see the total millage shrink as individual tranches or series of bonds are paid off.
I'm just looking down the road, but we're collecting money starting in 27, so they could be paid off sooner.
That's right.
Okay, all right. That's it, Chair. Thank you for now.
Okay, Chair Gertis.
Thank you. Could we go to slide 8 real quick, please? And while we're getting there, thank you for the presentation. This was super helpful. And my nerd brain probably took it one step too far, so sorry. One of the things that jumped out at me about this list, and thank you for sharing, is that, we're talking about over the next, 5, 8, 10 years, taking out $589 million, and the largest bond on here seems to only be 270. Can we just talk about, are we worried about that at all?
These are series as well.
These are just some of these are stacked?
So for example, one of these, they might have had a referendum pass and have multiple series, like Chris mentioned.
You want to come up?
I didn't, yeah, thanks, Jay. I didn't go through the line item by line item, so I apologize. But, so what you're saying is these are probably how we're going to do it, where it's multiple series for one larger project.
Some are multiple series, yeah. I know I don't, Pasco's probably listed several times. You can see there they had general purpose. I think they had maybe some public safety. So, and this is something Chris can attest to. There's like a single question rule. You can't lump stormwater with public safety with, park. So, a lot of them, if they have multiple projects, they'll have multiple referendum questions that get asked. So you see, Pasco was a great example of that. I think Key West might be on here as well. But, there are others. I mean, a large school district like Miami-Dade and Broward County Schools, I think they have referendums like billion-dollar referendums that they're passing. So, for a size, like the city of St. Pete, I don't have a concern about something like that's impacting your credit ratings, if that's what you're getting at. I mean, you
just wanted it said out loud.
You have very little general fund debt on your books right now. I mean, most of the debt that the city has is within the utility system. And the reality is, this is going to be debt that you're likely going to issue one way or another via the public utility system or the GO.
Yeah.
And GOs are going to be looked at much more friendly from the credit rating agencies because of the dedicated millage levy that would be on there. So no major concerns for me. I will say, I'm not going to sit up here and say your credit ratings won't go down at some point in the future, because credit ratings take a lot of things into account, but this debt in and of itself I don't think will impact your credit ratings.
All right. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. And then can we go back to slide 24, please? And so some of my colleagues talked about the equitable factor of spreading this across. And so I look at this a little different, and frankly it's a high five to the team with how you put this slide together. So here's what I did, because I think there's some math in here that I go, okay, that seems very reasonable to me when you're looking at properties that don't benefit from it in comparison to properties that do benefit from it. And so what I did was I took the spread, the $16 million spread across the 95,000 parcels, and I'm walking through this so you tell me whether I'm crazy or not, either Erica or Ann, okay? And so that's the benefiting properties. That's essentially $170.29 per parcel of cost that we're spreading out. And then on the non-benefiting properties, it's $17 million of cost over 12,000 properties, which is a much larger number, $14.52 of cost per parcel. That's at 8.54 times of monthly cost from a benefiting to non-benefiting. And then what I did was I took the $19 billion of value and divided it by the $7.7 billion of value, because it's value versus value, cost versus cost, and that's a 7.86 times of value. So they have, it's a big number. They have almost 8 times the value in 12,000 parcels in comparison to the 95,000 parcels. And so it seems to me the closer those two numbers are on the multipliers, the more equitable this is. And I'm not sure we can get a whole lot closer on that math. And so this slide was unbelievably helpful for me when walking through this, and I hope that made sense. Is what I just spit out tracking with you two?
It does. And And correct me if I'm wrong, but properties not benefiting from GEO also has commercial properties
Yes.
possibly in
Yeah.
there as well. So
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
residential and commercial.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
good to know, that we're not just.
Yeah, it's
looking
all
at-
parcels.
All
Yeah.
parcels. And like Ann said, the SPAR increase, 5.9 million, that's an estimate on average. So that increase could be, you know, different, much different. Their average bill could be much higher for commercial. So,
Right.
you know, factor that in as well.
Yeah, I just thought as we're talking about spreading the cost out equitably, this slide really provided a glimpse of, I think it's just about as well as you can do it while using the GEO bond in comparison. And so I just wanted to share that and make sure I wasn't going crazy. I think that's all I had. I'm very thankful for this presentation. Thanks for all the work that's been put into it. There's a couple other things that I'd like to see. We don't need to get into it now, so at some point we could just set up maybe like Tom, if we could do a 3-on-1, me, you, Ann, and Erica, because there's just a couple of comparisons that I'd like to go through as we start the utility rate conversation in 2026 for 2027.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I see no further hands, and I just because we've had all the committee members, I'm in the committee, I'll take other questions afterwards. I just want to put in my 2 cents. So, look, this conversation comes about, as we know, because every time we go out, people are wondering, what are we investing in our system? You know, what are we doing with our stormwater? Why were the wastewater plants shut down after the storms? And I could go on and on and on. And the simple answer is it costs money. That's a plain and simple answer. We have investments that we make, and you're going to get a certain amount of level of service based on the money that can be paid for those investments. And when I think about the general bond and giving the public the opportunity to say, yes, we want to go forward and do this, they can say yes or no. And so I think it's a good place to have this conversation at this time. And I think it's extremely important to communicate exactly what the public wants, because to get to yes, it's not just going to be areas that flood. It's not going to be other areas. It's going to be the whole city. And you have to show, like in my district, when I look at the map, and I know it's a map that is not set in stone, how do I explain to people in my district, right, how they benefit from that? And I know we've had these conversations, Claude, because there are different ways you can benefit from it, right? You can benefit from it if you live in an area that you may benefit from investments in stormwater, versus people that are like, I don't want to go without our wastewater system in place when a storm comes. I want to make sure the investments are made to those systems, or our portable water system goes down, because that's what affects them. So I think we have to kind of meet residents. And I think that's why you have different elements in this, because you have to meet residents where they are and what their needs are. And not all the needs are going to be the same based on where you live in the city. So I need to make sure that whatever we do, we can communicate no matter where someone is and what their issue is, how this is going to benefit them. I think if you improve our wastewater plants, it benefits everyone. Stormwater projects are much more localized. So there are different projects in this that are going to have a citywide benefits. I'm not saying stormwater does not have citywide benefits. They do in their way, especially when you look at the whole system. But I'm saying in a more concrete, yes, this is going to benefit you and why. So I think communication about that is going to be extremely important. Chair Gertis, I'm glad that you asked the question you did, because I was wondering about affordability. How does the analysis of affordability and the rating come into play? And Jay, you kind of touched upon that. And I think that's extremely important, because affordability comes about when we take out bonds, right? And we do whatever the splits are, and that's discussed. But how does this extra, tax, right, on the ratepayers, how is that analyzed as a whole. And I think knowing that you don't believe that's going to be an impact is extremely important. You know, how do we get to the right number for the bond? That was kind of that general same conversation that we're having. I do think we have to have kind of an answer for that. Why is this the right number? And it's been touched upon in different ways, but why that number? Why is that number going to make the impact it does? It's not going to solve all the issues, like Councilmember Gabbard said earlier. And I don't want the public to think that this is going to solve all the issues, but it's going to take care of issues that we know we're facing in a much more expedited fashion, and that we need to resolve anyhow. And then the other thing I want to just touch upon real quickly is, it was touched upon a little bit about the mill changing over the time of the debt, because you're taking out this debt at different times. And I'm just curious, is there an idea of what that range could be? I mean, is it something where it's going to stay under, you know, the 1 mil or whatever it is based? I'm just wondering how that is managed. Is there a way to do that? I don't know.
Jay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think part of, it wasn't shown here, but I think, again, Jay Glover from PFM, part of what we prepared was an Excel model that shows the series of debt being layered in over essentially 4 years. So your millage is going to ramp up over 4 years, and then there's going to be kind of 26 years where it probably tiers down because your assessed values are growing. And then that last 4 years, your millage is going to tear down significantly as each series of debt goes off. I mean, it's hard to explain. I'm happy to share the Excel model with you all, but it's sort of like, you know, the millage levy tiers up as you issue each series of debt each year, and then it's just tearing down slightly because your assessed values are going, then it goes down in kind of equal installments each year. So, yeah, I mean, based on the projections that we have, you're going to, you know, max out at a mill. I want to be very clear. The referendum will not limit that millage levy. The referendum is going to be limited by how much debt you can issue. So if we have a situation where assessed values go down, you know, significantly, you're going to have to levy more than a mill to cover the debt. So we talk about the mill. I want to be very clear with that. That's an estimate, you know, that could change over time, but we don't think it will, obviously. But I guess I hope that answered the question. We're happy to share the Excel model that shows all that.
No, and I think it's just kind of important to understand, and maybe if you could share that Excel model at some point with us, that would be great, because I think it's kind of what people may want to understand, how that impact may affect them. But that was kind of what I wanted to understand on the mill. I know that it's not based on the mill for sure, and people shouldn't expect that. And then the other thing I just wanted to touch upon, because it was communications, are going to be extremely important. Legal had issued a memo back on August 15th regarding how the city can communicate related to referendums or other ballot questions. I think we're going to have a conversation on that specifically, again at another PSNI, to kind of cover what we can communicate and what are our limitations legally, because that's also going to be very important, given that the communication piece is important. So I wanted to say that before we continue. So that's all I have to say. We have, we're scheduled to end at 10:40. It's 10:34. I believe we have Councilmember Fig Sanders. You wanted to?
Well, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a quick question. Thank you all for the presentation, and yes, you gave us more information than required. Is there any way I can simplify this? You gave the results by zip codes. Some districts may cross, so it's easier because a lot of my residents don't know what their voting district or voting precinct is. Is there a way did you break it down by district so we can have that verbiage per district?
Right now, we have the parcel, we're using the property values, the property parcel file, so I have the parcel numbers.
Okay.
So if we can get another database that would have the parcel numbers to those districts, I could merge those together and add that information.
Thank you. That was my question. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Councilmember Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. Before we wrap up, just kind of a piggyback, I think, on Council Chair Gertis's comment about one-on-ones. We had the utility rates starting all over again here very, very soon. I'm just going to ask of administration that we have conversations about a Plan B as part of utility for next year, simply because nothing is guaranteed, and I have some real concerns, which I've already shared, about kind of this concept of putting all our eggs in this one basket, and then if it does not pass, now we're kind of back to square one. I was pretty vocal about that the last time that we talked about utility rates. I'm going to continue to be vocal about it. We have got to have a backup plan just in case, and one that is much more robust than what we ended up with this last year. So I'm just going to make that request out in the public so everyone can hear it, and I hope that those conversations, when they start in January, will be much more robust this year. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from administration? Anyone else?
No, thank you, Chair. I mean, if I could, just real quickly, you talked about getting together again, and I think that's really important, and I just want to reiterate kind of what I heard. I think in the past couple meetings, we've cleared some of these financial hurdles in the discussion about, explaining some of this financial information to the committee. I think we really need to focus on the projects, going forward, continue that discussion, the education campaign, like you talked about, and potentially start getting into some of the ballot language. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there for everyone to hear, kind of going forward for the next PSNI. That's kind of what we're hearing on our side.
Yep. Okay, great.
And Madam Chair?
Yes, Tom, we cannot forget you.
There was some discussion earlier, I think Chair Gertis mentioned that the outline or the tables that we provided were super helpful. I just want to thank Ann and Erica. One of the things we took away from our last discussion was that the presentation of the numbers was a little bit convoluted, so I challenged everybody, and Ann in particular, and Erica, to, hey, let's make this as simple as possible, and let's redouble our effort to make it understandable. So I want to thank them for that, and thank council for your feedback. And again, Madam Chair, thank you for your flexibility, allowing me to participate at home.
Oh, we couldn't have this without you, Tom. Well, thank you, Tom and team and everyone that's here today that joined us. This has been a great conversation. It was a lot of information. Clearly, a lot of work has gone into this, and it is extremely important for our city. That's why you have so many subject matter experts that are involved in this. So this will be a continuing conversation, so it's going to stay on our PSI referral list. We do not have a meeting in December because of all this scheduling. But our next meeting is in January, and that is still being worked on in terms of the agenda. But with that being said, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Meeting adjourned.
So